Hello, welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we are going to study module 10, and that is speaking skills. After studying this module, you will be able to identify the two major aspects of speaking skill, enumerate the significance of speaking skill, understand the essentials of good speech, differentiate between written and spoken language, understand the nature and details of some speaking activities, understand the role of the teacher in development of oral skills. Speaking is the process of building and sharing meaning through the use of verbal and non-verbal symbols in a variety of contexts. Ben Jonson says, "Language most shows a man. Speak that I may know thee." When you speak, you use all the essentials of speaking: pronunciation, voice modulation, juncture, pause, stress. All these elements constitute good speaking. The moment you open your mouth and you communicate with others, you speak, people know what type of person you are. Speaking resembles good culture. It shows which culture you have come from, and therefore development of speaking skills is very, very important. Let us see what the speaking skill is and how it can be developed. Speaking is the process of building and sharing meaning through the use of verbal and non-verbal symbols in a variety of contexts. Speaking skills have two major components. First, there are motor perceptive skills, which are the means of perceiving, recalling, and articulating in the correct order the sounds and structure of a language. Second, there are the interaction skills, which help the learner to transfer his or her knowledge from a language learning situation to a language using situation. It involves knowing what to say, and how to establish and maintain contact with the other person. Generally, motor perceptive skills are developed at the primary level, where learners are put through various look and say exercises or pattern exercises. Usually, there is no context provided, and learners develop these skills through repetition and choral drill. But concentration on the development of motor perceptive skills leads to problems, as learners are not able to communicate well in real life situations. They are unable to use the language structures learned. Therefore, it is important that more emphasis is laid on interaction skills while learning a new language. Essentials of good speaking. Speaking involves pronunciation, juncture, stress, rhythm, and intonation. Pronunciation involves the way of producing the sounds of a language. For example, you will have a tear in your eye when your dress will tear. Here, please notice the spelling of tear and tear are the same, but the way you pronounce these words makes a difference. It is T-E-A-R, tear in your eye, and tear in your dress. So, tear and tear, same spelling but different pronunciations. One more example. When I say blood, it has double O-D, B-L-O-O-D, blood. When you say flood, it is F-L-O-O-D, flood. But blood and flood are not pronounced as food. So, when you say food, which has F-O-O-D, food, it is not pronounced as flood and blood. Therefore, pronunciation is very, very important. I could give you one more example which says H-O-W, how, but L-O-W is low. W-A-R is war, and F-A-R is far. So, these are different words which have the same letters A-R, O-W, but however, the pronunciation with their consonants are different. Juncture is simply the presence or absence of a pause between utterances, words, or syllables that makes a difference to the meaning of what is spoken. For example, why would you go to school when you could work and earn money? Why? Why would you go to school when you could work and earn money? Give the listener time to understand your words. Emphasize one main word in a group of words. You could also say it with speed when you say, why would you go to school when you could work and earn money? It is so difficult to understand when you don't take a juncture, or that is the presence or absence of a pause between utterances. Juncture thus is very important when you are speaking for the person who is listening to you, so that he understands or he or she understands exactly how it is said. Then comes stress. Stress is the degree of force with which a sound or syllable is uttered. For example, when the same sentence when said differently produces different kinds of meaning. When I say, I asked you to buy me a bunch of red roses. I asked you to buy me a bunch of red roses. I asked you to buy me a bunch of red roses. I asked you to buy me a bunch of red roses. When I stress upon roses, when I stress upon red, when I stress upon buy, when I stress upon you, every time I put stress on a different word, it produces a different meaning. Therefore, stress is very important in communication. Stress is very important in a speaking skill. You need to develop these type of skills so that you can bring the effect of your message that you want to put across. Intonation is the variation in the pitch of the voice in connected speech. It may be rising intonation or falling intonation. If there is no change in your intonation, if you do not bring about voice modulation when you are speaking, you tend to become very, very monotonous. People do not like to listen to boring speeches or monotonous tones. If I could just say, speaking is a this, and therefore it is a very important skill, and therefore you know you would not enjoy, and therefore you need to develop this skill, and it comprises of intonation and speech and tone and this and this. If I continue like this for about an hour, you would feel this lecture is very, very boring, and therefore you need to bring about variety with the help of your voice modulation. Correct speech involves the ability to use words, phrases and idioms already learnt with correct pronunciation and knowledge of grammar. Effective speaking involves basic courtesy formulas like conventional greetings and other expressions. You may have thank you, sorry, please, excuse me. All these are courtesy formulas. The more you use them, the more cultured you look to be. Speaking involves acquiring fluency and accuracy of speech. Public speaking is an art which one needs to develop with practice. A person who can speak effectively can present himself beautifully in front of an audience. It is not the outer personality or your beauty or appearance. It is not how tall you are or how short you are, how fat you are or how thin you are that impresses somebody. But it is your speech, the way you communicate, your speaking skill that creates an impression on the person sitting in front of you, and you are able to communicate effectively. There are many differences between the features of speaking skill and writing skill. Let us have a look at some of them. Written and spoken language differs in many ways. However, some forms of writing are closer to speech than others, and vice versa. First, writing is usually permanent, and written text cannot usually be changed once they have been printed or written out. Speech is usually transient unless recorded, and speakers can correct themselves and change their utterances as they go along. A written text can communicate across time and space for as long as the particular language and writing system is still understood. Speech is usually used for immediate interactions. Written language tends to be more complex and intricate than speech with longer sentences and many subordinate clauses. The punctuation and layout of written texts also have no spoken equivalent. However, some forms of written language such as instant messages and email are closer to spoken language, because the language used in these emails and chats that you have on social media are very informal in nature, and therefore they are more close to spoken language rather than written text. Spoken language tends to be full of repetitions, incomplete sentences, corrections, and interruptions, with the exception of formal speeches and other scripted forms of speech such as news reports and scripts for plays and films. Writers receive no immediate feedback from their readers except in computer-based communication. Therefore, they cannot rely on context to clarify things, so there is more need to explain things clearly and unambiguously than in speech, except in written correspondence between people who know one another well. Speech, on the contrary, is usually a dynamic interaction between two or more people. Context and shared knowledge play a major role, so it is possible to leave much unsaid or indirectly implied. Writers can make use of punctuation, headings, layout, colors and other graphical effects in their written texts. Such things are not available in speech. Speech can use timing, tone, volume and timbre to add emotional content. Therefore, these elements of speech are very, very important. It is not at all necessary that those who are good writers will also be good speakers. At the same time, those who can speak very well need not have very good handwriting or need not have very good written language. Written material can be read repeatedly and closely analyzed, and notes can be made on the writing surface. Only recorded speech can be used in this way. Some grammatical constructions are only used in writing, as are some kinds of vocabulary such as some complex chemical and legal terms. Some types of vocabulary are used only or mainly in speech. These include slang expressions and tags like you know, like, etc. There are many different activities to improve speaking skills. These can be carried on with any age group of people, and speaking skill is one such type of skill which can be improved at any age level. However, it needs a lot of practice and rehearsals. So let us have a look at some of these activities like dramatization, role play, situational conversations, dialogues, etc. The first activity is discussion. The students may discuss on a topic to arrive at a conclusion, share ideas about an event, or find solutions in the discussion groups. Before the discussion, it is essential that the purpose of the discussion activity is set so that students do not spend their time chatting with each other about irrelevant things. For example, students can become involved in agree-disagree discussions. In this type of discussion, the teacher can form groups of students, preferably 4 or 5 in each group, and provide controversial sentences like people learn best when they read versus people learn best when they travel. Then each group works on their topic for a given time period and presents their opinions to the class. It is essential that the speaking should be equally divided among group members. At the end, the class decides on the winning group who defended the idea in the best way. This activity fosters critical thinking and quick decision making, and students learn how to express and justify themselves in polite ways while disagreeing with the others. For efficient group discussions, it is always better not to form large groups because quiet students may avoid contributing in large groups. Groups should be rearranged in every discussion activity so that students can work with various people and learn to be open to different ideas. Lastly, in class or group discussions, whatever the aim is, the students should always be encouraged to ask questions, paraphrase ideas, express support, check for clarification, and so on. The second activity is the role play. Another way of getting students to speak is role playing. Students pretend they are in various social contexts and have a variety of social roles. In role play activities, the teacher gives information to the learners such as who they are and what they think or feel. Thus, the teacher can tell the students that you are David, you go to the doctor and tell him what happened last night, and the role continues. Here, the students may take up various roles. At an earlier age, the students may take up roles of a doctor, lawyer, teacher, anyone, whereas older students probably may be given certain sketches of social workers, politicians, wherein they are told about what type of character they have or what type of a person that is the role of whom they are going to play, and accordingly they will use gestures, expressions and the script that they are going to perform. Role play is a very effective method of teaching to speak well. Simulations are very similar to role plays, but what makes simulations different than role plays is that they are more elaborate. In simulations, students can bring items to the class to create a realistic environment. For instance, if a student is acting as a singer, she brings a microphone to sing and so on. Role plays and simulations have many advantages. First, since they are entertaining, they motivate the students. Second, as Harmer suggests, they increase the self-confidence of hesitant students, because in role play and simulation activities, they will have a different role and do not have to speak for themselves, which means they do not have to take the same responsibility. The next activity is information gap. In this activity, students are supposed to be working in pairs. One student will have the information that the other partner does not have, and the partners will share their information. Information gap activities serve many purposes such as solving a problem or collecting information. Also, each partner plays an important role because the task cannot be completed if the partners do not provide the information the others need. These activities are effective because everybody has the opportunity to talk extensively in the target language. Another activity to teach speaking skill is brainstorming. On a given topic, students can produce ideas in a limited time. Depending on the context, either individual or group brainstorming is effective and learners generate ideas quickly and freely. The good characteristic of brainstorming is that the students are not criticized for their ideas, so students will be open to sharing new ideas. Storytelling is one more activity which enhances the speaking skill. Students can briefly summarize a tale or story they heard from somebody beforehand, or they may create their own stories to tell their classmates. Storytelling fosters creative thinking. It also helps students express ideas in the format of beginning, development and ending, including the characters and setting a story has to have. Students also can tell riddles or jokes. For instance, at the very beginning of each class session, the teacher may call a few students to tell short riddles or jokes as an opening. In this way, not only will the teachers address students' speaking ability, but also get the attention of the class. Storytelling can be done in the following ways too: with the help of theme pictures, several sequential pictures in a line, with the help of skeleton forms or rubrics of the story, or maybe also by giving incomplete stories. Storytelling is therefore a very interesting activities that most of them like at any age level. Conducting interviews is another activity which helps to boost the speaking skill of the individuals. Students can conduct interviews on selected topics with various people. It is a good idea that the teacher provides a rubric to students so that they know what type of questions they can ask or what path to follow, but students should prepare their own interview questions. Conducting interviews with people gives students a chance to practice their speaking ability not only in class but also outside, and helps them become socialized. After interviews, each student can present his or her study to the class. Moreover, students can interview each other and introduce his or her partner to the class. Reporting is another activity to boost up your speaking skill. Before coming to class, students are asked to read a newspaper or magazine, and in the class they report to their friends what they find as the most interesting news. Students can also talk about whether they have experienced anything worth telling their friends in their daily lives before the class. Playing cards is another game which helps students to develop their speaking skill. In this game, students should form groups of 4. Each group will represent a topic. For instance, say diamonds earning money, hearts like love and relationships, spades an unforgettable memory, clubs, the best teacher. Each student in a group will choose a card. Then each student will write 4 to 5 questions about that topic to ask the other people in the group. For example, if the topic diamonds earning money is selected, here are some possible questions. Is money important in your life? Why? What is the easiest way of earning money? Would you think about lottery? And many such other questions. However, the teacher should state at the very beginning of the activity that students are not allowed to prepare yes or no questions, because by saying yes or no questions, students get little practice in spoken language production. Rather, students ask open-ended questions to each other so that their reply comes in complete sentences. Another activity to practice speaking skill is describing a photograph or a picture. Another way to make use of pictures is in a speaking activity is to give students just one picture and have them describe what is in the picture. For this activity, students can form groups and each group is given a different picture. Students discuss the picture with their groups and then a spokesperson for each group describes the picture to the whole class. This activity fosters the creativity and imagination of the learners as well as their public speaking skills. Find the difference is another activity which also promotes speaking skills. For this activity, students can work in pairs and each couple is given 2 different pictures. For example, a picture of boy playing football and another picture of a girl playing tennis. Students in pairs discuss the similarities or differences in the pictures. The difference between the balls, the difference between the games, the difference between the way of holding the ball, everything is different. So, here the students have ample opportunities to describe what they see in the picture. Now, here there are certain suggestions to teach speaking. Grab all opportunities you get to speak. Work collaboratively on different tasks so that knowledge can be shared. Do not shy away from any speaking activity. Remember, you learn if you participate. Practice voice modulation, practice stress and juncture by loud reading, text with dialogues. It will help you to be a good orator. You may come across so many storybooks and novels. You must be reading them too. But perhaps you are doing it silently. Silent reading does not help much in speaking skill. It is the loud reading skill that helps you in developing your speaking components. Observe the postures and gestures of good orators and develop your own style of communication. Listen to news or programs in the language to be learnt. Take help of experts or friends who speak well. Gather vocabulary that you would need in speaking activities beforehand and practice pronouncing them correctly. Do not hesitate to check word meanings and pronunciation before you use any new words in your conversation or speech. Mistakes are bound to happen in the beginning. Don't worry. Take feedback and criticism, if any, very positively. Make friends with unknown people from different places and then converse with them on a regular basis. You will not be tempted to talk in your own language then. The more you speak, the faster you learn. That's all for this module now. Let us sum up in this way. To conclude, I would say speaking is a very important skill that each one of us must develop, because even if we do not have a very charming personality, outward personality, it is a speaking skill that impresses the others and we are able to communicate our message effectively to others. Today, we have seen in this speaking skill, we have seen what are the activities that help us to develop our speaking skills, and also we have focused upon different components of good speaking like pronunciation, juncture, stress, rhythm and intonation. So, happy speaking and develop your speaking skills. Thank you.